I hope everyone can see the screen now. Today is the last meeting for term one. I will let you know about the details about term two at the end of the presentation. Today we'll talk about the people from Hong Kong going to Britain under the BNO legislation. What is BNO? British National Overseas is a type of British nationality created in 1985 that people in Hong Kong could apply for before the 1997 handover to China to retain a link with the UK. Now, this is a travel document. It does not provide a citizenship to Britain. This is a lifelong status, which cannot be passed down to family members as well. Do not give holders any special rights, not even consular protection when you are traveling using the British National Overseas. It means only they could visit the UK for 6 months without visa. So that is the only thing that is allowed with the British National Overseas passport. So in a way, it is not actually passport. It is just a travel document for those who doesn't want to apply for the Hong Kong Special Administrative Regions passport, which again is different from the passport from the mainland China. So this situation in Hong Kong is very complicated. I myself hold the Australian passport. I also hold a Hong Kong Special Administrative Region passport. As I'm born in Hong Kong, so I have the right of abode in Hong Kong, and it also means that I can also carry Hong Kong identity card, which indicates that I was born in Hong Kong. When I travel, I will use the Australian passport. But in the case when I want to go to China, I will use the Hong Kong identity card together with this return to homeland pass. That means I don't have to buy the visa in order to enter China. If I haven't got the Hong Kong ID card, and if I want to go to China, I will have to apply for a tourist visa to China, which will cost me about 350 Australian dollars. It is valid for one entrance, and the maximum number time of stay is 2 years. But for using my Hong Kong ID card together with the return to mainland pass, I can enter into China multiple times for 10 years at around 500 Hong Kong dollars. So 500 Hong Kong dollars are divided by about 5. So it's about 100 Australian dollars that entitle me to travel to China in the next 10 years with unlimited length of stay. I can stay as long as I like, and I am also able to work if I want to in China under that arrangement. But if I go to China using my Australian passport plus the visa, I won't be able to work. I will be only visiting China as a tourist. Okay, back to the BNO, the British National Overseas Passport is only a document for traveling to identify yourself. Now, some people in Hong Kong, especially for those who might be older than me, may not be born in Hong Kong, and therefore they may not have the right of abode. And therefore, if there's anything happen to them, they will have to seek other countries' consular help. We all know that in 2019, there's a big riot in Hong Kong, or a big protest in Hong Kong. And by June 2020, the Chinese Parliament, or correctly speaking, is the People's National Congress, applied a security law on Hong Kong following months of protests and arrests in reaction to a proposed extradition law. And the UK government was among those who said it restricts the rights and freedoms of the people of Hong Kong and constitutes a clear and serious breach of the Sino-British Joint Declaration. The Sino-British Joint Declaration stipulates the handover of Hong Kong to mainland China on 1st of July 1997. After that, then the Joint Declaration becomes a historical document. It no longer serves any purpose. During this, in this Joint Declaration, it speculates that the Chinese government will enforce a law so that Hong Kong will be operated under one country, two system. And that law becomes the mini constitution of Hong Kong, or we commonly refer it to as a basic law. Since it is handover of sovereignty, and therefore on 1st of July 1997, any matter related to Hong Kong is a domestic policy matters of Hong Kong. China and Hong Kong doesn't have to seek approval of any change of policies from Britain, because the status of the Sino-British Joint Declaration has accomplished its historical mission on the night when Hong Kong hand over to China. So saying that it is a breach of the Sino-British Joint Declaration is an inaccurate statement. This statement is wrong. In terms of breach of the Sino-British Joint Declaration, yes, there has been many breaches. For example, this Joint Declaration was signed in 1986. Instead, it stipulates that Hong Kong will remain as a capitalist system, one country, two system. The one system is, of course, the Chinese law system. Now, Chinese law system is a continental law system, so that is quite different from British common law system. The difference being, in a common law system, a judge on the bench is actually a party to modifying the law. The law is the common law consists of all the laws legislated at the legislative council or whatever. So that is the statement itself. But the interpretation of the law is being ruled on by judges. That means how to interpret the law is based on cases, past cases. Therefore, the law itself is a combination of both the legislature, the wording of the law, plus the interpretation or the cases. In continental law, it doesn't happen that way. Every individual case is judged based on a literal understanding of the law itself. There's no other interpretation. The judge is not able to apply his judgment in order to shape the understanding of the law. The law itself is stated as it. So in a continental law system, there's no case studies. You don't have to study cases. You just study the law and then apply the law literally to cases. So there is a big difference, and that is referred to as the one country, two system, the part of that two system. Another system is that when the Sino-British Joint Declaration is signed, Hong Kong is a executive leading government. That means the executive branch at that time, the Hong Kong governor, appointed by the British Foreign Affairs Office, has the full responsibility and the executive right to put in laws or structure the rules, etc., all under his control. There was no election to office. Both the Legislative Council and the Executive Council are, the members of these two councils are appointed by the governor, solely appointed by the governor, although there are rules saying that how many members must be coming from the government bureaucrats, how many members can be selected from the citizenship. But the selection of the members are sole responsibility of the Hong Kong governor. The first breach of the Sino-British Joint Declaration occurred about 1 year before the handover in about 1995, where the then Hong Kong governor single-handedly changed the political system of Hong Kong into an election system. When the declaration was signed in 1986, it doesn't expect Hong Kong will change to a electoral government before handover. So you are talking about the breach of Sino-British Joint Declaration. Yes, it has a number of times breached the declaration, at least in principle, but it wasn't by the Chinese government. It was by the British government. Just about 1 year before the handover. I don't know whether that is acceptable or not, but that is a statement of fact. Now, we also notice that when British left Hong Kong, they do not offer any opportunity for people in Hong Kong to immigrate to Britain. Zero, because they only promise to give BNOs, which allows people holding this so-called passport 6 months stay in UK. That's it, nothing. So British government haven't given the Hong Kong people a choice of citizenship. The whole city, together with people, is handed back to mainland China. But anyway, after the British government accused the Chinese government of implementing a national security law, they changed the conditions for BNO, and it allows holders of BNO to stay in Britain for a maximum of 5 years. And after the 5 years, having stayed in Britain for 5 years, then these people will be eligible to apply for a British citizenship. And that takes the effect on the 31st January 2021. So today we are trying to look at how many people have actually left Hong Kong, take up this opportunity and stay in UK, and what their lives is like from very limited information available from the news. It expects the British government expect quite a bit of people will left Hong Kong to migrate to England under this possible path. So after the first 5 years, they are able to choose to apply for indefinite leave to remain, which means an individual who live and work without applying a visa. After 1 year of this status, individuals are able to apply for British citizenship. So altogether, from the day to the day you arrive in Britain to the day when you can submit your citizenship application, it is 6 years. It is much longer than what I have done here in Australia. I remember when I come here, I need to stay here for 3 years before I can apply, and then I become an Australian citizen. The British government estimate about 5.4 million Hong Kong residents are eligible for the scheme. That is about 72% of Hong Kong's 1.5 million population. This would include 2.9 million BNO holders who are born before 1997 and apply for a BNO before 1997. There's about 2.9 million Hong Kong people having this passport. Now, I left Hong Kong before 1997. And when I left, BNO is already in place, but I didn't apply for BNO. So I have never had a BNO. And about 2.3 million dependents of BNOs and about 187,000 18 to 23 years old with at least one BNO parent as a dependent. Now, it's very difficult to say how many eligible people will actually come to UK, but the UK government report published last year put the number of people expected to take up the offer at about 300,000 in the first 5 years. And that will generate about £3 billion of benefit to the UK economy over 5 years. So in a lot of ways, the British government is looking at stimulating UK economy by this influx of people, presumably carrying all their money and resources to the United Kingdom. Now, you want to go through that path, obviously you need to apply for a Hong Kong BNO visa, buy a visa, okay? And then this visa will cost £180 for two and a half years, and then another £180 for another 2.5 years, or you pay upfront is £250 for 5 years. Because these people coming to UK haven't paid tax before, so they are obliged to pay for an international health surcharge, IHS, and it will cost them £624 a year for adults and £470 a year for a child. So a family of 4 will expect to afford out about £11,940 in fees before they even enter the United Kingdom. Applicants also need to prove they can support themselves and dependents financially for the first 6 months of their stay. Unfortunately, it seems that the UK government haven't been very tough on this last condition. So when I gathered this information in preparation for this, so the latest information I can gather is on March 3rd, 2020. So it's about 1 month ago. The UK Home Office state that there is 103,900 Hong Kong have applied to move to Britain in the years since. The majority of the newly arrived Hong Kongers in UK are aged between their mid-30s and 40s, in the prime of their years in earning money. Usually, we would expect, for example, we graduate at around age 24 from university, some earlier, some later, anyway, around early 20s, with about 10 and 15 years of working experience. You will have arrived at some manager position in your career. And at this mid-30 to mid-40, I think is the prime years when people can make them bulk of their earnings. Of course, after 40 years, you still have another 20 years of work, which will give you quite a bit of income as well. But 30, mid-30s to mid-40s, early 40s is quite a fundamental years where you establish your experience and started to make a breakthrough in your career. So these people are leaving their opportunities behind, seeking for a new life. However, beyond lip service, there seems little structure in place for Hong Kongers to truly settle in Britain. According to Julian Chen, director of Hong Kongers in Britain, which is a community volunteer-based group set up by the Hong Kongers last years, adapting to new life here looks, say that these people are struggling. A lot of these people coming there are struggling. First of all, they haven't saved up sufficient money to last for the rest of their life. They are in the early career path, so they haven't got a lot of savings. And when they change to a new environment, it depends on whether they still have the job, the skills matching the job environment in UK, and whether they can actually adapt to their life and then restart their career. So that is a very risky move, I would say. As for myself, when I came here, I am also in the early 40s when I come here. I'm a bit fortunate in a sense that my career path is quite smooth. So when I came to Australia here, I was already at the end of my scales for teachers. I already is the most senior teacher at my school besides the principal. In that sense, I am lucky in that sense. And then the year before I left, I got an opportunity to work for UST Hong Kong, where I graduated as a senior computer officer, which opened up a lot of opportunities for me when I arrived here. So that's lucky for me. A lot of friends who come to here at around the same time, they are not as fortunate. So many of them actually, after obtaining the Australian citizenship, they went back to Hong Kong. Okay, coming back to here, new arrivals either have problem transferring their previous work skills or getting their qualification recognized in the UK. That is from the organization referred in the last page. As a result, despite many being highly educated and skilled, mainstream jobs are hard to come by. Meanwhile, new arrivals can't afford to stay without work while waiting to be issued their national insurance numbers. They often have to wait for approvals for their BNO visas for 5 months. So that eat into their savings. On top of all this, adding to the financial difficulties of many BNO visa holders, some are unable to withdraw their retirement savings from certain institutes in Hong Kong, such as HSBC, Manulife, AIA, etc. Now, here is that it is because Beijing withdrew recognition of the BNO passports as valid documents. But we must remember that when we have a account, for example, in Hong Kong, Shanghai Banking Corporation, HSBC, we don't use the BNO passport to open the account. We usually will use the Hong Kong ID card to open the account. And therefore, Beijing's withdrawal of the recognition of BNO won't impact on the money they have saved in HSBC. Typically, because Hong Kong ID card is a stable instrument. Its card numbers never change, even when we apply for a new card. Passport is different. Passport number do change when you apply for a new passport. And therefore, as a banking document, the bank prefers something much more stable, like the Hong Kong ID cards instead of passport. So in here saying that because Beijing withdraw the recognition of BNO as a travel document, hence people cannot withdraw their retirement saving is wrong. But on the other hand, I understand that a lot of the retirement savings are not able to withdraw because of the applicant's age. A lot, just like our super here, we have a minimum age where you can withdraw from your super. Same in Hong Kong, if you want to withdraw from your super, you cannot withdraw unless you met certain conditions. For example, your health situation doesn't allow you to work anymore. You have a permanent disability which will forbidden you to work. Or in this case, some of the super funds allow you to withdraw everything from your super fund when you permanently left Hong Kong. I also withdraw my my super when I left Hong Kong to arrive here. That withdrawal sacrificed quite a bit of benefits because the retirement funds will allow the government to continue to pump money into my account since I work in Hong Kong. But at that time, I withdraw it because I need to settle the mortgage here. So I would claim that I have been mortgage free in Australia ever since I arrived. But that is a very different story. Okay, so let's look at how the people in Hong Kong, from Hong Kong in UK, look at some examples. Case study number one. This one we have the name Adrian Learn and his family. And originally they planned to move to Canada, but the UK seems to be a better choice because to them it is easier. Compared to Canada's scheme, the criteria for Britain's scheme is much lower, easier. We just need to live in the country for 5 years. To me, it's much easier. Okay, so that was his reason to opt for UK. He was a teacher. Some of his students were persecuted and in certain cases imprisoned for the newspaper put it as demonstrating. In fact, if you only demonstrate, you will not be put in prison. But because some of the students are rioting and therefore it's put in the students. So he said he leave Hong Kong is for the sake of his son. For the future of my son, I thought we had to leave. I think he has a very misguided worldview. But anyway, we will have sufficient time to discuss what the world's future is, maybe in some other time. At the moment, Britain faces its worst cost of living crisis in decades, amid aspiring house, food, and energy prices. At that, I think when I gathered this information, the war between Russia and Ukraine haven't started yet. So with the ongoing war and the sanctions applied to Russia by Western countries, the energy cost is now over the roof, and therefore the cost of living will increase quite drastically. Learn his wife sold their apartment, cashed in their pensions, and used their savings to fund their move to Britain. They recently bought a home in Durham. the northeast of England, but not everyone has been as fortunate. He is quite lucky that his savings is able to afford him a home there. And with a home, then things are much easier. Case study 2. This one is from CNBC. One BNO visa holder who spoke to CNBC anonymously due to fear of a backlash arrived in Nottingham in December 2020 at the height of the UK's coronavirus lockdown. He quickly found himself in a catch-22. He can't rent a home without a bank account, and he can't open a bank account without a home. So after 6 months in an Airbnb, the 45 years old finally found a landlord who would house him and his family in exchange for 6 months advanced rent. His pension, meanwhile, remains held in Hong Kong under disputes. I don't know why it's under dispute, but anyway, money or salary is not our top priority, he said. Democracy, rule of law, civil liberties, and respect is. So hopefully he can get all this. So like many other highly skilled Hong Kong migrants in Britain, the source found himself sacrificing financial and professional stability for political security. He now works under contract at a hospital. By the way, both he and his wife are nurses in Hong Kong. He can work in hospital. That's good. But his wife had to work as a part-time in a warehouse, obviously sacrificing quite a bit of salary. By the way, the nurse salary in Hong Kong is pretty high compared to the rest of the world. I mean, he said, I have a gap year later in life, whatever that means, I don't know. Case study 3. Again, from CNBC, a second source found himself overqualified but for most available work. This is a PhD qualified university lecturer. He's decided to leave Hong Kong after a nightmare of 6 months job search. This 51-year-old, obviously, he will have quite a bit of saving now. Secure a part-time job at a popular central London fast food chain where he works. Like, obviously, from a university lecturer, downgrade to work in a fast food chain isn't something satisfying, I suppose. If I do not have children, my consideration might be different, because coming here, I have had to give up everything: work, money, friends, and status. Again, to me, what I miss most is actually friends. Okay, the last couple are a bit of more fortunate. There are some stories of less fortunate. A newly arrived Hong Konger got a job working as a chef in a Chinese restaurant in Cambridge. Since day one, his employer made verbal abuse at daily events for him. He was constantly insulted and shouted at. One Friday, the boss said to him, "I haven't beaten anyone for a while. If you promote me again, I will beat you." The man felt he has to leave the job immediately. His employer found him at the train station and demanded the keys back. "If I report it to the police, you will be finished," he added. "You didn't give any notice for leaving the job. You owe me 2 days' money." The chef contacted the London-based Hackney Chinese Community Service for help. HCCS provides advice, support, and work advocacy services to East and Southeast Asian community. It's one of the few ESEA community organizations that works directly with Hong Kongers, supporting both BNO applicants and asylum seekers. The central manager, who himself came to UK from Hong Kong more than 3 decades ago, dealt with the Cambridge chef's case and found out that there's no work contract, nor did the work match the job description since the chef was asked to clean toilets. Lam mediated and eventually got the employer to return the 5 days owned wages to the man, albeit reluctantly. Such cases on non-payment of wages are not uncommon among the new arrivals. So there is one problem the new arrival faces. Here, he actually provided the image. This is gathered from the Chinese newspaper, and I translated it into English. He came to UK in June 2021. He can't work. He is living with friends. He already moved 3 times. He got a place at the University of Nottingham to study philosophy, but he couldn't finish the registration process because he still have his asylum screening process. So he's stuck there. Some Hong Kongers fit to UK using the asylum system. The asylum system will require a process to assess your asylum status, and that process can take up to a year. So he is very much in a limbo because he go through the asylum process rather than the BNO visa process, because for his age he doesn't qualify for some reason. He doesn't qualify for age. Age is not the limit. I think that the question is that his parents might not have MBO certificates, because he is after age 19, so he was born after 1997. So his only way of getting a BNO is through his parents. If his parents haven't applied for BNO, that's why he can't get a BNO. I think that is more the reason rather than just because of age. Teenagers and young people from cities, they told the Independent, this Britain newspaper, they have indeed had to claim asylum in UK, leaving them waiting for a year or more for a decision, while being banned from working and often prevented from studying. MPs and campaigners say it is a scandal that young people who have often been on the front line of pro-democracy protests are excluded from the BNO route for reasons entirely beyond their control and are now facing agonizing waits in the asylum system. But the system like that. Okay. The Home Office figures show that there are 124 asylum claims from Hong Kong, so it's not much. In the year to June 2021, compared to 21 the year before, and then just 9 cases before. So obviously, what happened in Hong Kong in 2019 do means more people are trying to claim asylums, escaping from so-called Hong Kong's oppression. 14 of those in the past year were unaccompanied minors, marking the first time on record that the UK has received asylum claims from children from Hong Kong. The young ones who wanted to avoid bearing responsibility for crimes they are committing in Hong Kong have to claim asylum in UK, leaving them waiting for a year or more for a decision while they are being banned from working and often from studying as well. Here's an example called Vinu, okay, age 19, similar case to the last one. He lived on a very tight, I think it's she lived on a very tight budget. It wasn't enough. I got to emotion screw up. Sorry, it's her, not he. When it ended up buying herself a electric bulb and reduced supermarket food with the £9 weekly allowance, because the asylum accommodation provide only Hindu or halal meals. So he is staying in some asylum accommodation. This teenager also obtained a scholarship at the Glasgow University and is now living in the student hall, but he is still struggling. I've been in the asylum system for almost a year without any response. I don't know how long I need to wait. I want to go for some internships or work. I want to be independent. Here's another one, 19 years old Hong Kong rioters and fugitive Ewan, who took part in the riots outside Hong Kong Polytechnic University on 2019, November 18. Talk about his UK immigration. Hong Kong people have lost a lot since then, irreversibly. He said that the interview does not provide a pseudonym or cover up. He said that when he left, he had made the worst plan, bought some plastic glasses, and with the mood of being caught back to court at any time, he left the country trembling, seeking political asylum in Britain and embarked on a long journey, just way for more than 370 days, over a year. It was extremely bitter. It was used by Hong Kong people who claimed to be able to assist him and was used for unreasonable certain rounds by the outsourcing company that manages the accommodation of political asylum under the Ministry of Interior, whatever. Under this situation, I don't think it's a good way. This one, he is now homeless. Some Hong Kong riot insecurities who have migrated to Britain on shitty BNO visas have reported quietly relocated from UK to Taiwan because they couldn't afford the living in the UK and couldn't get used to living in a racist place. They end up choosing Taiwan for the lower living cost. And at least in Taiwan, with their Chinese faces, they would be regarded as normal people. Whereas in UK, they will be reduced to doing low-level jobs. Some have reportedly moved to Taiwan, but pretend they are living in UK on social media in order to save face. And some have actually moved back to Hong Kong and quietly return to their old habits of dining at their favorite restaurants, but couldn't dare to mention that they moved back. That is from News. This is a Chinese Hong Kong newspaper. Okay, so very quickly, next term, the dates, May 23rd and 30th and June 6th. Same time, start from 1:30 to 3:00. Topic is about archaeology in China. The first session would looking at the terracotta warriors, and then the second session we're looking at some of the oldest instruments found in China and compare that with musical instruments found in the rest of the world. And then a new archaeological site called Samsingdui, and this found a lot of golden artifacts. To join next term, you can use the Zoom link you joined today. I'm reusing all the links in order to avoid complications. Okay, so that's the presentation for today, and I will welcome questions. Yes, hello?
Albert.
Anyone, any question?
Albert, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
I assume in China, there's a trade-off between complete freedom of expression and reasonable living standards and happiness.
Yeah.
Is there a danger that if things go wrong in China and the economy goes down and, there's hyperinflation or recession or something really bad happens and people aren't happy anymore, could there be a revolution there compared to a democratic country, which, if the same things apply, at least there'd be an election and there'd be a new government appointed.
Yeah, certainly this is a possible risk of a government like that in China. That's possible. But at the moment, the central government of mainland China enjoy 98% support, as reported by Ash Center in Kennedy School in Harvard. So that means at the moment, the people in China is quite satisfied with what is happening.
Sure.
And in terms of a sudden collapse of economy, I don't think the chance of that happening is high for two reasons, at least two reasons. The first reason, China is the only country in the world who has every items of manufacturing in United Nations list of businesses. China has every business type or every industrial products from the whole list. So that means the chance of China going through a famine like the early 1960s is very unlikely. The second reason is China now has about half of the world's food reserve, which is built up over many years. Of course, recently, some Western countries accuse China of hoarding of food, having a very large food reserve. But the Chinese participation in the world food market is mainly supplementary, put it that way. China is the world's largest producer of wheat. No, I think Russia is the largest producer of wheat. Yeah. China import only about 5% Chinese wheat demands. Almost every category except soybeans. China import about 85% of its soybean consumption from overseas, mainly from United States and Brazil. So that is the only item China depends heavily on imports. For all other food items, China is basically self-sufficient. So food shouldn't be a problem. Industrial shouldn't be a problem because China has the full industrial capability in almost every domain. That means China's internal domestic economy will sustain. When it's cut off, it will still sustain for a while. Another important thing is, of course, energy. China is not energy sufficient. China depends on almost 60 to 70% of energy input. In the next few decades, China is going to switch from the current heavy carbon-based energy into a lesser carbon-based energy, or even to a totally renewable energy. At the moment, the Chinese renewable energy installation is over half of the world's total installations. That means China has more renewable energy installations than the rest of the world combined. But it's still not enough. It only represents about 7 to 8% of the Chinese energy needs. So in there, China still have a long way to go. China imported most of its natural gas from Kyrgyzstan. And just at the beginning of the Winter Olympics in Beijing, China and Russia signed a big natural gas deal, and that gas will be pumped into China through pipes, and the pipes will have to be built in the next whatever years. I don't know how long it will take them to build the pipes to get the gas from Russia. In terms of petroleum, China imports from a very wide range of sources, including Saudi Arabia and Venezuela, etc. So energy is an issue for China. Other than that, I think Chinese society can be quite stable. So I don't see a need for the people to have a revolution in a foreseeable future.
Thank you, Albert.
Welcome. Anyone else? Yes, please.
Albert, I've got a question.
Yes, please.
I'm Andrew. I'm wondering, what do you think would be the effects of the Winter Olympics, both on China and on China's relationships with other countries?
Now, the Winter Olympics is it's not, now, countries host Olympics for different reasons. When a country is climbing up its development ladder, then at some point in time, they will try to host Olympics with almost maximum effort from everybody. Almost like if some people doesn't put in the effort, the Olympics won't be successful. I think that was the 2008 Beijing Olympics, the Summer Olympics. That was the time when almost every Chinese say, this is good for us. We want to demonstrate our ability to host a Olympics. But for the 2022 Winter Olympics, I don't see that. It seems that China is saying, okay, it is an Olympic, I can host it, so let's go. And of course, there are a lot of people excited about this, but it seems that it doesn't mobilize the whole country to work towards this one objective. People are still, a lot of people doing other things. But for China, I think long-term wise, it will boost its winter tourism. We know that there are a lot of countries famous for their winter tourism, especially those in the alpine areas or Japan or Korea and so forth. So China want to tap into this market by providing a winter tourist destination. So that's one thing. In terms of politics, not a lot of Western politicians was in China during the Olympics, almost none. The main political politicians
Putin.
will probably be Putin, and Xi Jinping and Putin spend a whole day together, so they must have talked something. There's another document I want to analyze. Is the joint declaration after Xi Jinping and Putin meet. That documents, in terms of documents after leaders meet, is exceptionally long. Usually when two leaders met, they will have a joint declarations or joint statement. And in China, that kind of statement is usually about 1,000 Chinese characters. But that one, the joint declaration between Xi Jinping and Putin is 8,000 characters. It's one of the longest statements after two leaders meeting. So I want to do a analysis of that documents a bit later on. Probably I will publish that through my English channel in YouTube.
It would be interesting.
Yeah, quite interesting, that document. So I think it also articulates how Chinese and Russia view the future of the world. I think this is a future vision statement. So and after that, there are other, for example, the Argentina president was there, and a lot of Middle East, the prince, the crown. I don't think it's crown prince, but anyway, the prince in some of the Middle East countries were there, but not a lot. I think there's no Western politicians there. Any follow-up question?
Any problem with China with an aging population? Is that a potential problem?
Potentially, it will be a problem. But if we really look at this aging problem, the Western country is actually older than the than China in terms of age. Our Western countries, ladies' birth rate has been low for decades. China only experienced that low birth rate recently. So yes, China is getting old, but the problem will be faced by countries like Japan and European countries before China really had to face to it. And therefore, China have a lot of learning opportunities, put it that way. But China also preparing for that as well. Again, there are different kinds of aging. If we have a healthy age group, that doesn't cost a lot of money. But if the age group has a prolonged period of health demands from medicine, then that will be a big problem. And China still, most of the Chinese family will still house their elders at home. They won't send. We try not to send our elders to elder homes. For example, my mother died at my sister's home instead of in a elderly home. Obviously, she died in a hospital, but she was taken to hospital from my sister's home when she passed away last year, about this time.
But
so we Chinese usually will house our parents, so that shouldn't be too much an issue. It will be an issue, but haven't been very acute at the moment yet. It will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Oh, yes. Yes. Congratulations, Albert. It's a fantastic talk. Lots of information.
Thank you.
I would also like to know, we know that a lot of Hong Kongers, they migrated to UK. What about Australia? Any of them coming to Australia? Any number?
Not many, but there are some.
Okay.
Including a few very noisy ones. Yes, we have some. But there is an issue here. It also will be an issue for those Hong Kongers joining to the UK communities, the UK Chinese community. In the riots in 2019, people are actually divided into two groups by color. One is the yellow group, and another is blue group. The yellow group is more about democracy, wanting to have a lifestyle similar to the Western lifestyle. The blue group is the pro-government, pro-existing system, pro-China. So in that sense, I'm slightly blue. I'm not deep blue. I'm slightly blue. I'm obviously not yellow, but some are very yellow. Now, Chinese people living in the rest of the world, a lot of them. From what I understand, most of them are like me, slightly blue. Some are blue, and obviously there will be some yellow, but mostly will be slightly blue. And hence, when this deep yellow, those rioting, committing crime, trying to escape the rule of law from Hong Kong, they are deep yellow. They will have a big problem integrating with local communities. And in Australia here, we know a few deep yellow here, very noisy one as well. And they settle in Sydney, not in Melbourne, as I know. But how they can integrate with the existing Chinese community, I don't know. If they doesn't talk about politics, that would be okay. But if they still want to talk about politics, I think there will be quite a bit of clash between the existing Chinese community and the newcomers. When I come here, we don't have this problem. We don't have a political divide, but this political divide is now very apparent since 2019. So that would be a big problem for those coming to any place in the world, actually.
Do the people that are slightly blue prefer a democracy like Australia or Britain, whatever, compared to the regime in China? Otherwise, they wouldn't be here.
No. For the deep blue, they will support the Chinese political system. Okay. For those like me, slightly blue, at least for, I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for a lot of people. Is that I live in Australia. I support the Australian political system, but I have no say because I am no longer a citizen of China. I give up my Chinese citizenship. Yes, I do hold a Hong Kong passport, but that's because my birth relationship. I give up my Chinese citizenship. When I go to China, I can work, but actually work as an expat because I can. Of course, I won't at the moment. I'm retired, but if I can. So for a lot of people like me here, at least from the people I have in contact, they respect different countries can have their different political system. We shouldn't intervene other countries' choice of their political system. So for people like me, slightly blue, we see that China is advancing very fast in terms of economy, in terms of its industry, in terms of its social fabric. I think that China has been improving its social relationships much better than we have today. It looks like, for example, when Wuhan closed up the city in 2020, we don't see any people coming out to protest. People support the government, and that is part of the social fabric. We can't do that here. Like yes, Melbourne have closed down for a very long time. I think Melbourne has a very good social fabric. That means we supported our government during that lockdown time. We don't come out protesting and causing government a lot of headaches. We are good people. But you will look at other countries, for example, in Europe, people come out to protest whenever there's a lockdown or whenever there's a mandate for wearing masks or vaccinating. But I don't see that in China. That means the Chinese government and the people trust each other, just like we Melbourneians trust our government when they want to lock down. And we do suffer a very long lockdown, and economically we suffer, yes. But it seems that we work with the government, like Melbourne here, for example. And I see Chinese people also work with the government. So I call myself light blue in that sense, because I know I'm living in a political system different from the political system in China. I can see, because their system is stable and therefore they can plan for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, while we can't. And there is one problem we should try to find a solution to. Otherwise, from competition point of view, we will lose.
If you were 20 years old and you had complete freedom and opportunity to live in China or here or America, wherever, and you had a certain amount of money or whatever, where would you choose?
I choose Australia.
Why?
That was my choice.
Why?
Now, I left Hong Kong because of the 1989 Tiananmen incident. Okay, because of that thing, I decided I can't live in a Chinese government ruled world. So I decided to move. When I decided to move, I chose Australia right away, because just a few years before that, my wife and I have been traveling. We have been to Europe, we have been to UK, Canada, and we have been to Australia as well. And I love Australia, especially Melbourne. So when I decided to move, I come directly to Melbourne. I don't even consider Sydney, because I just fall in love with this city. So even without the 1998 event, I may not have moved, because after all, I have left my career, my friends behind. I may not have moved. But for retirement, for example, if my daughter come here to study and then she obtained a residency in Australia and asked us to come to Australia and stay with her, I think I will probably come very happily. But I have made the choice when I was only 40, not 20. When I'm 20, I don't have the capacity to move. My wife and I come from a very low socioeconomic zones. We are very poor when we were young. I'm on the margin of hunger for a very long time when I was young. When I entered university, my body weight is only 99 pounds. So about 45 kilos. So I'm malnutrition and weak physically. So in my 20s and 30s, I don't have the ability to move. I don't have a choice.
Well, I respect your acceptance of different systems and be tolerant of different systems as long as they seem to be working.
Yeah, if they're working for themselves, why not? Why we want to interfere? I think there is a very different moral compass. The Western moral compass is if I want to treat people like the way they want to treat us. The Chinese moral compass is, I don't want people to do that to me, so I don't do that to other. So in effect, one is a positive. That means I have a value. I like this value, so I will use this value to treat you. Another one is a negative. That means I don't want to get hurt, so I won't hurt you.
Yeah.
In most cases, that two moral stands come to the same moral standard, but they do have a major difference. The major difference is the Western style is that when I think this is a good system, I will urge you to join that system. So we are selling our values, forcing our values to others. But in the more Eastern value system, we don't. We just don't want to get hurt, so I don't hurt you. That's it. I'm not promoting my value system to anybody. So there is a major difference here.
Is that
I think I adopted more of this. I don't want to force you to accept my value system, just like I don't want you to force your value system onto me.
is that from Confucius?
Yeah, that's a Confucius idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is a Confucius idea versus the Jesus idea. Yes, please.
Oh, but do you have a view on Beijing's current move to establish a presence in the Pacific around the Solomon Islands and what that might mean for our relationship with them in the future?
I think our positions, our politicians are overreacting. Solomon Islands is a sovereign country. They have the right for their own foreign affairs. If they want to a same peace treaty with any country, I don't think we are not in a position to say no to them. If, of course, China wants to increase its influence around the world, just like any other countries. Improving your global influence is not equal to militarizing the world. China is not going to build a military port in Solomon Island. And their treaty, as I understand it, is it will have to be activated by Solomon Islands. So if Solomon Islands has a security risk, they can ask for China's support, but not the other way around, because China understands it is a much larger country, and at the moment, at a much more economic, powerful situation than Solomon Island. So that is a one-sided treaty, as I understand it. For us, we are not having an independent foreign policy. I think we should seriously rethink about our national foreign policies. China is our largest trading partner. We sell a lot of goods to China, making us one of the most wealthy countries in the world. Why agitate our largest trading partner for the sake of Americans?
I agree.
Who took our share? For example, when China say we are not going to buy beef from Australia, who make up that little niche market? The Americans. We shouldn't. We shouldn't do that. We should have been keeping a good relationship with our trading partners. We might not like China's internal policy, but that's China's problem, not ours. And in terms of saying that China doing this, that, this and that, for example, in Xinjiang. Well, unfortunately, a lot of that are just rumors as well as make-up stories. They don't exist. Xinjiang is the world's largest producer of cotton, tomato, and a lot of fruits. It is the food basket of China in a way. And because of the scale and the population, it is no longer possible to produce that much produce by human labor alone. Xinjiang is one of the world's highly mechanized farmland in the world. John Deere, the agricultural machine company in United States. Xinjiang is John Deere's largest market in the world. So accusing Xinjiang using forced labor to collect cotton is just laughable. The amount of cotton produced will need not tens of millions, it will need hundreds of millions people to pick, if not mechanized.
How do you know, though, Albert, how do you know that the Muslims there aren't incarcerated?
There are a lot of YouTubers in Xinjiang. And you will follow them, they will bring you to different parts of Xinjiang, talking with local people, visiting local people, and they are themselves locals. They benefited from the Chinese growth, and many of them are trying to get that story out to the rest and tell people that no, the Western media are lying.
How do we know those people? I've seen some of those on YouTube, but how do we know they're not lying, or they haven't been paid by the government?
Or on the other hand, how do you know what is published in the Western media is correct?
Yeah, I don't know either.
So we keep an open mind, and then if we have a chance, go there and have a look ourselves. And don't fall in the trap and repeating what the Western media is saying, because they are not reliable like anybody else. They are just.
I agree totally, but why does the Chinese government not denounce these sort of accusations? I never hear anything.
Even if they announce, the Western media will say the Chinese government is covering up. So why waste the effort?
Yeah.
They're on a hiding to nowhere.
Better thing for the Chinese government to do. For example, improving the lives of the people.
I had the same question, Peter. Thanks for that.
Now, in the past 40 years, China haven't fired a bullet towards any enemy. Yes, there is boundary dispute between China and India, but they settle that with stick and stones rather than firearms. Quite interesting.
No, I agree. I mean, I think America, I don't trust America, to be honest. In our own lifetimes, we've seen so many where America has tried to impose their political system on other countries. And we can see that in Vietnam, in Korea, in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Iran, South America countries, and that's been in our lifetime. We've seen in front of our eyes.
Yeah, they have caused a lot of harm to many people around the world.
Yeah. But I'd like to still see some evidence, I don't know how you do it, of that there's no problems in Xinjiang, with the Uyghurs. I don't know how you... I can't go there. I'm not going to go there. But
a lot of people say, okay, Chinese treat the Muslim very badly. Okay, but all the Muslim countries, they have sent their delegations to Xinjiang, and they supported the Chinese policy towards these Muslims in Xinjiang. So I think that says a lot.
It does, but I'd like to see those countries, the Middle Eastern countries, come out in the open and say, we don't see any problems in Xinjiang. Why don't they?
They have.
Have they? Well, I haven't
They
seen.
have, but the problem is the Western media is not reporting this. So we don't know. But if you look at, for example, the UN resolutions, look at their statements, really search for them, you can find them. But our Western media is not reporting all this.
I think it's a terrible mistake to talk about a thing called the quote unquote Western media, because there's a lot of variety in what we call Western media, and that may not be all that well replicated within China.
Now, I think that is another topic I want to do. Obviously, not under China Today's framework. So I have I? No, I haven't read a book yet. I have downloaded that book. There's a book talking about the Western ownership. And the Western ownership are referring to mainly those news media from US is owned by, I think it's 5 or 7 people. They are, yes. Last Friday, in one of my Cantonese shows, that is on science, we have a guest from Hong Kong universities. He teaches economics in universities. He said he did the research, his postdoc research in Australia. Unfortunately, I haven't asked where he did his postdoc research. His main area is economic modeling. His first degree is in engineering. Second degree in I think is in business management, and his doctorate is on economics, and his postdoc is about economic modeling. He told me one thing is the economic textbooks that USD use all come from free publishers. And these free publishers is actually monopolized the whole economic field. And a lot of the theories that is taught in these textbooks are actually wrong. He quoted one example. He said he asked his students in Hong Kong, he is now in Hong Kong, one economic question: which country in the world manipulated its currency and yet is considered trading fairly and freely with the rest of the world? What's the answer? Which country or which area manipulated its currency yet is trading fairly with the rest of the world with no condemnation from any country?
Obviously, US.
No.
No, Britain.
Hong Kong.
Hong Kong. Oh,
Hong Kong dollar is controlled by the Hong Kong government's a special branch, something like the Reserve Bank, to make sure Hong Kong dollars do not fluctuate more than 5 Hong Kong cents a US dollar. Hong Kong dollar is pegged to the US dollars. Anything deviate more than 5 Hong Kong cents, this organization will interfere and make it come back to that level. So it manipulated its currency 100% for over 30 years now.
We could just get back to economic theory and the idea that what's projected in the Western world might be uniform because essentially we have a monopoly of publishers. I mean, I'm just looking at my shelf of economic textbooks at the moment, and there's a vast array of different texts with different views, all published within the West. I don't think it's true to say that there's just a single view there. I mean,
yeah, done I research on that one. Well, of course, I'm not a economic professor. I haven't done the research myself.
Yeah, if you look at someone like Piketty, for example, from France, and put him up against Milton Friedman. I know Friedman's dead, but he still has his disciples. I mean, they're two polar opposites.
Yeah,
that's quite typical of political theorizing in the West. I mean, it's very broad ranging. It's not uniform.
I'm quoting him rather than I say it myself because I have no expertise in that area. But that's what he said during one show in my show. I think by now you know that I have a Cantonese YouTube channel which is quite popular. So he came onto my show and then talked about that. So that was in Cantonese anyway, but I can look it up and then because at that show he do show his evidence. So I need to verify the evidence. I haven't.
Do you have a view as to why China is investing so much money into Africa and also into Sri Lanka?
China want to now for the last 40 years, China consistently has a trade surplus. That means China has a constant inflow of foreign currency. Now, Chinese renminbi is not an international currency now yet. Okay, so when you trade using US dollars or other American or Japanese yen or Europe's euro. Okay, and because it has a trade surplus, so it has a large collection of this foreign currency. From what happened recently to Russia, we know that this foreign reserve can reduce to zero overnight at the stroke of a pen from a foreign politicians. So what they do, if you want to protect that values, which at the moment is only paper. So you want to invest that money into something physical. Where to invest? Of course, in the developing countries. You want to invest in developed countries. You have to buy at a good price because they are developed countries. You want to buy them, they don't even let you to buy them. For example, our government do not allow Chinese investor to buy our land, so they can't. Or our mine, so they can't. Although our mine is sold to PHP, is that what's that? What is our mine in the Western Australia owned by a few companies, but they don't allow Chinese company to buy it, so they can't. So, but given the amount of foreign reserve, now foreign reserve cannot be used in domestic investment because domestic investment is valued in renminbi, which is controlled by the Central Bank of China, so they can print money to handle domestic investments. They don't need foreign reserve to do domestic investment. What they do with this foreign reserve? What you have to invest it somewhere. So where do you invest? Developing country, of course. Where else? So I don't see any strange thing here. You want to invest in somewhere, they are not forcing any country to accept their investment. If you accept investment, they're happy to come in and use their investment to help you build up something. And of course, this is an investment. You are not doing charity, so you will expect a return. But the return can be very long term. 10 years, 20 years. That's what the Chinese government is doing in the rest of the world.
Albert,
Yes.
Albert,
Yeah.
it seems that the older people in Hong Kong, it seems they are more tolerant, or they are more accepted the mainland China's law and order, or because they are so old, they can't move anyway. So, or is it true that the older people they more readily to accept that's okay? It's nothing really wrong to.
First of all, Hong Kong is part of China because the British government handed back to China. So Hong Kong is now part of China, although it is run by a special administrative region government. Okay, so there's the number two is almost 98% of people in Hong Kong are ethnically Chinese. We are Chinese, okay? Some of them may not like the political system in mainland China, but Hong Kong still runs its own political system. It's different from China. So far, Chinese government has been very strict in terms of not interfering with Hong Kong. For example, even at the moment, Hong Kong is suffering from the fifth wave of coronavirus. The experts coming from mainland China is still coming in as an advisor instead of a policymaker, and left the Hong Kong government's official to implement. And to me, I think it's not acceptable. I think we should have left the Chinese experts to actually manage the COVID. Then it will not have suffered at the moment 7,000 deaths already, and over 1 million people infected. So for that, I'm not very happy. I think the Chinese government should intervene and then save lives. But instead, they still, under such circumstances, left the Hong Kong government to run the COVID response, which is handled very poorly, frankly. I don't like it. But anyway, that was Chinese government. So Chinese government is not trying to intervene. Chinese government has been almost hand off and let Hong Kong government do its job. Albeit not very good.
Albert, do you think the majority of Taiwanese people want to become unified with mainland or not?
It depends on their media as well. The current Taiwanese government understand propaganda very well. So it eliminated all voices which is not favorable to the current government. I think there is a risk there. But I think the Chinese government will not use force to unify unless the Taiwan government proclaim independence with the help of a foreign government. unless this happens, then Chinese government will just let Taiwan develop in its own way. And the living standards has been pulling off now. About 20 years ago, Taiwan living standard is slightly above the mainland China, but now it has moved off. The living standard in China is much better than Taiwan, and it is a matter of time when the people in Taiwan understand that joining mainland might give them economic benefits, and if they negotiate well, they can have their own independent government as well, and autonomous region, enjoying the economic benefits without being ruled by mainland China. I think that would be the best outcome for Taiwan if the politicians are smart enough to negotiate.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, and then we will see you next term.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was
Thank you
great.
very much, Albert.
See the screen again in case you want to copy down the time. The time is the date May 23rd and 30th, June the 6th. Same time, 1:30, 3:30. Same link. You can save today's link and then use it for next term.
Albert, do you know if the U3A is sending out a notice on this, or do you know if we can join yet, or what?
Yeah, I think the 4 UVAs participating in this will send out the invitation again. I have passed that onwards to the course coordinators already.
Oh,
Okay.
good.
So
Thank you.
yeah, they will send it out in the appropriate time. And if you know friends who would like to join, you pass them the URL, the link.
Right.
Thank you, Albert. That was really
Albert.
informative.
Yeah, really good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, see you next time. Bye.
Thanks, Albert.
Happy
Bye.
Easter.
Thank you. Have a good break. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.